And I just remember living in New York and carrying these art and photography books around on the subway.
So what I loved about the old lenses, it was really that it has these moments of sharpness on the edges and then the fall.
We had a big ambitious concept for the series.
With every job, there's a different puzzle to solve or a different problem. You know, I kind of love prep because it's never the same.
That was like, you know, going down the rabbit hole of like, why is this lens so beautiful?
I'm positive that we are moving, you know, in a better direction.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today for a session guiding images from concept to screen, a collaboration between Women in Cinematography and Panavision. I'm Zoe Mutter, editor of British Cinematographer magazine, and today I'm joined by a fantastic panel of talented cinematographers, so I'll just run through who they all are. So we've got Kate Reid BSc, Nancy Schreiber ASC, Zuzanna Kernbach PSC, Rachel Clark, Simona Susnea, and Fernanda Tanaka ABC. Now, in today's session, we're going to be focusing mainly on the prep process, because there's more than enough to cover there, as you'll see. We've got a lot to discuss. So we just wanted to start off, really, a good place to kick off is just looking at how each of you starts that prep process. How do you like to begin that? So, Zuzanna, if you want to kick us off.
Okay, hello. Thank you all for coming. I've been on panels before, so I know how it is to and what you want to listen. I was always curious how the other DPs are preparing their films. So I'm a student of Jola Dyleska, who's now in the jury, and she taught me that the first question you have to ask yourself is who is the camera in the movie? Like, what's going to be her position? What she knows? If she knows more than the characters, or she knows less? Where do you want to place it? Behind, in front? So that's one of the things that always, when I read the script, pops in my mind. And she always talked about that the DP has his own actors, and the movement of camera is one actor. Then you have the color, then you have the perspective, then you have the rhythm, and of course not all of them can be lead actors, so you have to choose what's going to be the most important in that film. Is it the color and the movement of camera, or maybe something else? So reading the script for the first time, you kind of get the ideas already, and then there's talks with director, of course, and that we're going to probably talk about this more, but every film has its own way of preparing. It really depends as well on the director, if he has strong ideas already, how he sees the film or not.
And Rachel, do you have anything to add about your process there?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to understand the script really and breaking it down and communicating with the director just to make sure. I'm going to say she because the film I'm talking about, the director was a girl. But yeah, just when I was prepping the movie that's in the festival now, we just talked a lot with the director. It's her first film, so for me it was important to understand how she wanted to tell the story and to make sure I understood her. And because she didn't have that language, she wasn't used to having those discussions. So we just talked a lot about movies that she liked and she responded to. And, you know, she would say, like, this movie, I love the lighting, or this movie, I love the movement of the camera, or I responded emotionally to the atmosphere in this scene. And so we'd spent a lot of time. I don't normally look at movies, but that was the way she used that language to show me. And then, yeah, I look at a lot of photographs and a lot of references, and I tend to like get loads and loads and loads of photos, and then as you get further into prep, you kind of throw them away because that one's not relevant anymore. But I think it's a good way to kind of communicate with each other, to show people and see how they respond. So I remember in prep we had loads and loads of images for different scenes and different moods. And then kind of towards the end of the film, when prep, we just had a couple left. So there was like the core heart of the scenes, really.
Yeah, because I think we're going to see a clip from Edge of Summer later on, which is in the Cinematographers Debut competition at the festival. But I just wanted to watch a clip from Kate Reid's work, and then you're going to talk us through that invitation to a bonfire. So I'm just going to play the clip first, if we just dim the lights as well. Oh.
Here at these DIY luncheons, there are lemon bars everywhere. Sag Harbor, mostly.
You should have come round. I was in Montauk.
Architecturally, I prefer Holyoke, but my mother wants me to go to Smith.
I'm dodging all that.
Too good to me. I'll turn it into shit, you know that? Cigarette butts, scriptlings, no cunts everywhere.
I hope so. Take that one off next.
I miss your true calling, darling. Overseeing penal labor. With your good fur hat, you could come out across my
Oh, please, darling.
No, I have to make sure those men are tightly shackled.
Really, darling, I won't have time to shower before the tour.
You skip it. All right, boys. You heard the lady. On three now. Raz, dwa, three. Oh!
Very good.
Darling.
Olaf residence.
Vera, bring him back.
Did Lev put you up to this?
I'm serious.
New Jersey's lovely, actually. It's very green.
How's this for green? The early numbers just came in, and Felice is a surprise bestseller.
What?
I know, those were my thoughts exactly. Who knew the old Rusky had it in him?
Why, that's marvelous.
Instant classic. Someone actually used those words. Is he there?
No. Sorry.
So if you could just tell us a little bit about that project and how you developed the style from the script through to what we just saw.
Yeah, so that's actually not been released yet, which is, so you're looking at the offline. So that's not graded, it's just as it was. So, but yeah, the idea behind it, it's a beautiful script, and I read the pilot and I just loved it. So it's a series, and I love the pilot and I love the second episode, and there was such an intimacy. So the first character that you saw in that clip, the main character, you feel like you're watching the world from her perspective. And it's always very fluid with her. She's the kind of energy that drives the story forward, because everything is, kind of her desire and what she's trying to achieve. And then there's these two other characters that you saw in the scene in the house, and we're kind of more watching them because they become the point of her obsession. And so it just sort of felt naturally that there was some fluidity in both the worlds, but that with Zoya, it tended to be more from her perspective. And so the camera either led her or followed her. And we were generally closer with her on slightly wider lenses. And then in the Orlov house, in their world, it was a little bit more objective, longer lens. You were usually shooting through some kind of obstruction. And so that just sort of, like, as I read the script, that was kind of my feeling of seeing this kind of world unfold. And I loved how you articulated, the where the camera is and what perspective it is. I think usually when I read a script, if I feel something, then, well, usually that's a sign that, you know, it's a good project that you want to shoot. But I'm then like, how did I feel when I read that, and how am I going to give that expression to the audience? So that's kind of usually where I start from with it.
And did anyone else have anything to add about their different perspectives of how they begin the process as well? Not sure, Simona, we're going to see your work later, but if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I think for me, it depends with what kind of project I'm doing, because I started in short films. It was always just being very close with the director. And that was a great learning process because, you know, the projects were short, which meant that I could prep as little or as much as I wanted. And I used that time in pre-production to do my own research, if you want. And then when I started doing television or features, I found myself that even though I wanted to use that time for the creativity, I never really, you know, like had that capacity. So I sort of learned to adapt my process to still get time for my own creativity, but also work within the timeline of like television, especially when you're doing like 8 episodes. So for me, actually, the prep process starts with a question like, how I ask the director, how do they want to prep? Because I have my own process, and I feel like I've arrived now at a point where I know I can work fast, and I have my own steps. But every time I work with somebody new, that changes because I need to react to what they want to do. So apart from like the usual protocol of reading the script, do I connect, and how do I see it personally? I think it's very important to break the ice with the director and understand how they want to work. Like, do they want a shot list together? If they don't, how do I still make my mark? And that actually continues in the first couple of weeks of the shoot, or sometimes even longer. Like, you have to kind of find your place within the project. Yeah.
And part of that process is gathering research and inspiration. So I was just wondering if any of you use any tools or techniques, if you could maybe, Nancy, suggest some that you might use.
Well, first of all, it starts with the script. And I'll read it 3 times. And although we're not talking about concept, on the weekend, I always read the whole script over again because we're shooting out of order, and I want to make sure that my visuals are still in sync with the emotion. I consider a movie the way we shoot. For me, it's like a piece of music, and, you know, so I like to choreograph the musical beats, as it were, the different, well, we have acts, each act. And if I don't read the script again, it's not that I'm lost, but I just want to make sure I'm true to what the story is, what the director and or writer is about. Now, it's very different in television. We have these directors coming and going. I think it's important for us to look at their other work. Also, you know, we have so many bosses in television. It's difficult to, you know, we're always in the middle. Our incoming directors want to put their stamp on it, and we have to be the ones to say, that's interesting, I like that, but, you know, we just haven't quite done that in our visual style. And if you have some problems, you have to go back to production and say, this person wants to do something that's not in our, you know, anything like our style. So it's an interesting thing. And I know I didn't answer the question, but it starts with the script. And yes, you know, people can talk about all our great tools. We have just one other thing, because I started a long time ago. We used to have in-person meetings, and now so much is on Zoom. And I just remember living in New York and carrying these art and photography books around on the subway. And, you know, now it's all online and images with, you know, shot deck and, you know, film grab, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, it's another world. But it's really good to be in person with everybody.
Okay. And Fernanda, I think we're going to look at some of your clip and some of your influences now. So those were clips from the Queen's Orphans, which is at the festival in the Cinematographers Debut Competition. And I'm just going to click through your slides. If you could explain your process there of how you gathered your research and inspiration.
Hi, thanks for having me. Well, yeah, I really love, for this movie, for example, I really love paintings. All my life, love painting. So it was a bit different process because I was hired for this movie 15 days before start shooting. So it was like I had no time to prep, pretty much. So it was crazy. It was a sprint, you know. I had to think of so many things. It was a small budget for a period piece. And I had to work with the local crew. It was shot in Minas Gerais. And I had to, you know, work with the equipment, the local equipment as well. Except for the camera that I could bring from São Paulo. Thanks, God. And, well, so I didn't have time to prep exactly. But I always like to do my own research, right? Like everybody else. But turns out that the director worked for 10 years researching for the movie. She went to Portugal, she went to Spain. And she had like so, you know, lots and lots of materials, but she didn't have actually a sort of mood board for the visual concept of the film. So that was not there. So, well, I had to figure out myself how to do that, because she wasn't exactly the type of director that says what she wants visually. She wasn't like that. But the production designer was amazing. So the sets were beautiful, and I didn't have much to work with. But well, I read her research, of course, and tried to make as natural and as beautiful as possible. Yeah, so for this movie it was really a very unique prep. Not that is one.
Yeah. I have two questions actually.
Okay.
So with such a short prep, like Simona was saying, you know, and she hasn't got time, she kind of like speed preps and she does her like basic. What was like the most essential thing you did in your 15 days? What was like the thing you focused on the most?
Wow, that's
Can you
a difficult
remember?
question. Well, actually, I tried very hard to understand from her, the director, what was, you know, what was she aiming in each scene. But we couldn't actually talk extensively about it because obviously we didn't have time. But I tried to understand what you liked and what you didn't like, basically. And but I had to trust that she would like what I was going, you know, my work. So then that's it. I didn't reply to your question.
And then my other question was, if, you know, you said she wasn't really that way inclined to give you visual language or give you any indication, do you find that harder or easier? Because you can use your own instincts, or do you find it harder because you don't have any guidance?
Well, I find it harder, but at the same time, it's very, very freeing because we can do whatever we want, in a way. I think that work with a director that really says, well, this is on you, you know, you decide whatever you like most. That's at the same time really a pleasure, right? Because for us, it's like, what, you know, here, go. It's perfect in a way, but in another way, it's hard because you don't quite know what to expect.
Yeah, there's no limitations. Sometimes that's bad, dangerous.
Exactly.
You go crazy.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
The shortlisting process, everyone does that in a different way. So I just wondered, Simona, because you're going to we'll show a clip from Sweet Sue in a minute, but if you could just run through your process there, but I'll just move on to the next clip from Sweet Sue.
Yeah, so I'll just give you like a rundown of what Sweet Sue was. I worked with a director called Leo Leigh, who's Mike Leigh's son. If you haven't seen or heard of Mike Leigh's work, he worked in a very intuitive way, and then Leo adapted, I guess, like, did that in his own way, which meant there was no script. When I was hired, or at least I was, called for an interview, I was sent like a 20-page breakdown of what essentially will be the final script, but there would be like a description of a paragraph of what the first scene is, right? So I've chosen the beginning of the film, which is like the intro, and then, like the actual page was saying, there's this woman, there's a restaurant, would like slightly describe the mood of the space. And I actually found that really liberating because I was not reading words and trying to process the words, but I was just getting into Leo's sort of head to understand, like, what's the story world? Like, what's the texture there? Like, who is this person? And actually read very mysterious to me. And Leo then spent something like 5 or 6 weeks just doing rehearsals with the actors, rehearsals that I didn't attend. So, like, from my prep, which was like very short for weeks, I only had this like 20-page document that I started to build like an extensive mood board on, but I refused to look at other films. Like, I generally try to avoid looking at films. I have my own, I guess, like process of gathering references from going to museums, getting the photography books like Nancy is saying. I still carry them, by the way. I use my phone a lot. Like, if I walk on the street and I see something, I photograph it, and I'm sure a lot of people do. So just try to keep it very intuitive and preserve kind of the weirdness of the project. And then at the end of each day, Leo and I would meet at the production office, and he would say, oh, there's this scene that developed into like this kind of moment now. And I would like spend the evening to find references and bring them the next day. And very often it would be something like, I took some photos in the rehearsal, and he would show them to me. And then I would find paintings with a similar composition, or, like a similar way of like placing a character within the frame. So it just became, even though we were like working together, we were also working separately. But that was like an amazing way of, of like doing prep, because I was relying on intuition and just, what he put in the script, in the script the first time. Yeah, so there we go.
Thank you. I'm just going to play the clip, hopefully.
Where are you? I'm starving here. Dana?
I'm not coming.
What do you mean you're not coming? Where are you?
I'm at home.
What are you doing at home? What's going on?
I know you were looking forward to tonight, but I can't do this anymore.
Are you taking the piss?
No, I'm not.
Tonight was your idea. You booked the fucking table.
I'm sorry.
Fucking hell. I can't believe this. You're a piece of shit, do you know that?
Oh, don't say that. No, please don't say that.
I've been sat here for 20 minutes eating these bloody breadsticks, and you're at home.
I'm sorry.
Stop saying you're fucking sorry.
I tell you what. This is on me, okay? Ask for Charlie. Put it on my tab.
So they're going to look after me, are they? That's very kind of you, thank you.
I really am sorry, yeah?
Yeah, touch it bye, you fucking weirdo.
all right.
No, no, it's our London night. No, no.
You're all right. You're all right.
No, stop. Paul. Paul, go and get someone. Go and get someone. Go and get someone.
Right.
Paul, go and get someone.
This is better.
Paul. No, don't leave me on my own with her.
What do you want me to do? You said go and get...
Paul, she's got my drink. Paul, she's got my drink. Paul.
What do you want me to... Calm down. Calm down.
And I just wondered if anyone else wanted to add anything about their shortlisting process. Rachel, if you have anything to add there, we can cover it later on now if you want.
I mean, I guess it depends on the director. Some directors don't want to do that and others do. I try and at least have an idea before I start. So, you know, do you want to cover this in one shot? Do you want to move? You know, I would really like to talk through every scene and do like a page turn and understand. And I will make like a little shot list, and you know, obviously people want to know, like first AD wants to know, and you're trying to time out the day, and you're trying to figure out in the schedule which scenes are important, like which scenes you need to allow more space for, and which scenes you might be able to, you know, do a bit more quickly. So it's really good, I think, to go through like the whole script in prep, just so you know where the best use of your time, because you don't want to be figuring that out on set. You know, you want to be using all that time shooting or working. But I'm always prepared to just chuck it in the bin, to be honest. I don't really look at it once we start shooting. I think it's more the process of doing it makes you understand the story, makes you understand what you want to do, understand the, you know, the point of view, what bits of kit you might need. But I kind of do go to the day prepared to just chuck it in the bin if the actors do something different. I do a lot of stuff with non-actors and young people, so I can't always tell them what to do. I don't feel like comfortable doing that, so I have an idea, but I try to also be open-minded to kind of adapt.
I was just going to say the same in terms of, you know, cast, because certainly on Bonfire, you know, the cast, you know, are very committed to their craft, and they were not interested in, you know, if you said, oh, please stand here, that would have gone down, you know, pretty poorly. So I think that so the director, Shireen Daibus, is brilliant, and we were doing 11 days an episode on 10-hour days with no overtime. So, you know, when you kind of look at the coverage, you think, well, really, we're only going to be able to cover this scene in 3 shots, you know, and it was great that she was really, you know, wasn't interested in that sort of single reverse. And so that sort of led to the style where you're trying to be as economic in your blocking and the camera movements, so that you're not having, you know, sort of 10 setups on a scene, just because there wasn't the time. And I think that with television, that's often, you need the director to lead that choice, because you can either go the coverage route, which is, you know, lots of cameras, and then you kind of make it in the edit, or if you've got a really strong director that is, you know, is kind of committed to a language of, you know, visual language, then, you know, you shoot a lot less, but what you know, it's all necessary. You know, there's nothing that's been thrown away afterwards, which is obviously, I think, for everyone's preference, because then you know, you're really getting to tell the story with the camera rather than, you know, sort of just a sort of scattergun approach where it's constructed afterwards.
Yeah, and I meant to say as well, I always try and have in my mind, you know, there's always some days you run out of time, or something happens where the changes, or someone casts late, or whatever. So I always try and have, like, at the bottom of my little notes, if I had to shoot the scene in one shot, like, what would that be? Like, how do you tell the story in one shot? Or, like, what's not essential? You know, these are little details that I need, just to always have that emergency plan, just in case.
And budget has come up, a few of you have mentioned it already. I was also wondering how that affects your prep process and the time you have, and also as you've progressed throughout your career, how your prep process has developed. And I know, Zuzanna, I don't know if you want to talk about Swarm first, or if you want us to play the clip just to introduce that project.
I think, yeah, it's not a clip, it's a trailer. Yeah. I think there was a clip. Well, yeah, let's play it, maybe. And
Zamieniłbyś te poranki, które są tutaj?
Świat jest różny.
Nie ma bezpieczniejszego miejsca na świecie niż ta wyspa.
Wolność
Boję się. One są dzieci.
Ale od życia się nie da zrobić przerwy.
Będzie coraz trudniej. Wróćmy na zimę, chociaż na jakiś czas.
Masz robić to, co ci każę. Masz to robić, tak czy nie? Nigdy tam nie wrócę.
Wracamy. Chcesz tam płynąć?
Nie mamy dokąd. Tam i tak wszystko płonie.
To już nic nie ma.
Płyń. Tylko zostaw dzieci. Ty co masz w środku też. To też jest moje.
Zabiłeś mnie.
That was fantastic. I'm also going to clip through your PDFs if you want to talk about your concept to screen here.
Thank you. Yeah, this was an interesting project. The director was very he was very well prepared. Like, he was preparing this film for 5 years, and then together we prepared for another years because it was all moving, like financially problems, etc. So he came already with a very strong mood for the film, which was perfectly aligned with my how I like to tell the story. Then we were looking for a place that would actually be an island, like Poland has no islands, and so he actually walked through the whole coast of Poland to find a place that could be, pretending an island, and we knew we're gonna have only few days of we knew we have to build the house, the things, and we won't be able to rehearse there because it's gonna be all at last moment. So we had we had a lot of talking about the moods, and as far as I like to use reference to paintings, and he had them as well. But when I'm preparing a film, I always want as well to use some reference of other films, especially according to night scenes, because I think there might be lots of different views on night. You can film the night in many different ways, and to be on the same page how the night will look like, it's very useful to show another pictures of films, how it was done. So the prep process, we had a lot of time for tests because it was moving. I knew that I'm gonna have a lot of nature in the frame. For me, it was very important to have the mud, like the difficulties of the life there. So there was nature, and it couldn't be all beautiful and like picturesque. I don't know the words, but it had to be really tough in the picture as well. So we did the test, and for me, for example, Sony was too smooth, yeah? So I went for Alexa because I knew, if you could put the next slide, I knew we need this other feeling, and I tested the lenses as well. We chose the Leica Air rehoused because I loved what's happening on the edges of the frame. We had Alexa LF in the very end because that's where you actually get the full frame, and it doesn't cut the edges. So what I loved about the old lenses, it was really that it has this moments of sharpness on the edges and then the fall, and it happens when you film on the full frame. So, and it was the director was pretty strong about having this in the widescreen. So what I did, if you can put, we choose the upper or like the lower part of the full frame. So we did the crop because it's, you know, it was a difficult decision, because in this way we had much more footage, right? If we took the only like 69, you know, the widescreen of the full frame, it would be much less footage, and that's money, right? That's a lot of space. But they allowed me to do it, so we could use the lenses, like the whole thing that's happening when you use the old lenses.
What lenses?
Leica R. Rehoused, yeah. So that was one thing we did, and then yeah, that's the visuals from Bartek, from the director. He had it all, you know, in his mind how it should look like, and then we had worked on Blender. The art department generated for us in the space, the house, and that's how we went through the whole shoot list. We had it very specific for each scene and made virtually because it didn't exist. Like a previous. And what's there next? So that now you can see how that this is the house, the outside of the house, and the inside of the house is on the next shot. So the tricky part was as well that it's a moment that the house has only one window left, so everything else is closed. And in the first 10 minutes, they even closed the last window. So it was like, okay, it was a very important part of the script, but very difficult situation for a DP to film the interiors only with the chimney that's inside and the lights. And we even made the candles, so they are proper candles, not the new one, but made from the wax. So there was plenty of little details that he was really strong. Like it was very nice to collaborate with someone with such a, strong vision that was very aligned with mine. So we were two, and the production really made it possible to do it our way. So that was a great time. That's just a preface of it.
That was all Blender, you were saying that?
Yeah.
The previous.
So that's another film of mine, trailer as well, sorry.
Ziemia moim ciałem, woda moją krwią, powietrze oddechem, ogień siłą mą. Ziemia moim ciałem, woda moją krwią, powietrze oddechem, ogień siłą mą. Ziemia moim ciałem, woda moją krwią, powietrze oddechem, ogień siłą mą. Ziemia moim ciałem...
Którym jesteś? Pierwszym! Którym jesteś? Pierwszym!
Powietrze oddechem, ogień siłą mą. Ziemia moim ciałem, woda moją krwią, powietrze oddechem, ogień siłą mą.
Raz, dwa, trzy.
So this film is an example of totally opposite way of preparing, because we were writing the script with the director on the go, basically. It's a specific situation because we are asked to do a film that will promote actors of the film school. So it was strictly said that as many actors has to be featured there. It's all young people, so you have to find a story to tell, to put them inside. And it was like, the director started to write it like 2 months before we shot. And then we were elaborating it. And this is the example. Aniela Gabriel is the director, and we collaborated before on some other short films and on a feature documentary. And we always looked for a way to show with the camera something that's in the air, like some energy, some things that are interior experience. And so she has strong beliefs and strong views, but she needs me as a translator, basically, to show her ideas. Because so there we tried to find a language that shows what the inner experience is, and as well to connect there were 6 stories, and each of them was different, but in all of them the young people were looking to heal somehow their traumas, but they look for it in the gym, they look for it in the sweat lodge, they look for it in many places. But we tried to find these images that would be symbolic, that reconnects us to things that we've seen already about uniting people, connecting with others, or different. So here's some frames from the Sweat Lodge episode, and you see, like she was saying, the naked bodies, like this is something that evokes us already plenty of different thoughts, right? And then people gathering together to this tent. We had this frame in every episode that some people are joining the middle of the frame. So these were like some ways of making so many stories together. And here are some shots from the Sweat Lodge inside, and we constructed the tent in the studio, and to show what's happening inside our mind, we constructed a tent that opens up, and then in the studio, some memories evoked comes to us, right? So it was a project that had really like minimum money, like none. So on the next clip, you see how I'm filming it on a cavale, it really needed a lot of creative approach and finding a way to show something that's fantasy, like fantasy world with no means really. So that was a challenge.
I just want to move on to scheduling as well, and how you actually split that time up. I'm not sure if we could play a clip from your project first.
Parece mar verde.
Lira.
Sem documentação, vamos abrir a estrada.
A menina vai ser iniciada. É uma missão muito grande para uma menina.
Carol está sempre comigo.
Este é o caminho que você deve seguir.
Onde a gente não entende, a gente enfrenta. Não importa o que eu quero, não importa o que a sua avó quer. O que você quer fazer?
O que eu faço, mãe?
Meu amor, seja o que for, a a gente vai estar juntas, tá?
So that was Fernanda's clip from, because that's a very different budget, wasn't it? So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear how you prep for, because that's a big budget Disney upcoming series, isn't it, Tara? So if you could just say how your prep process differed from low to high budget on that.
Yeah, so the series had a big budget compared to the previous movie, certainly. And it was quite different. I had 4 months. So then I was able to do everything, the mood board, absolutely everything I really needed. It was very, very different. Yeah, I could do some tests. And I could talk to there were 2 directors. I could talk to them a lot about how we would shoot, because a film like that, because there was another very challenging situation, because we had to go to the Amazon to shoot a part of the forests and everything. But it's really difficult to prep, because it's a ridiculously long trip, right? So the trucks have to travel like for 4 days or something like that, because there's no equipment up there north. And we had to be really sure about what we would bring to the Amazon. And we couldn't bring much, let me say that, not enough. But yeah, that part was in the Amazon. And but it kept changing. It was actually really difficult, because we had a big ambitious concept for the series in the beginning, and then we had to keep cutting everything down because it wasn't going to fit. So we would build up a forest inside the studio, but then we couldn't do that. So we had to keep adapting ourselves into the reality we were facing all the time. So, but it was a lot of things to prep, as you can imagine. I couldn't show much because actually the series will be released next year. So I couldn't show much, just the small trailer that you've seen, because it was released 2 weeks ago. And yeah, that was really different. And there's so much, when you work for a big streaming like that, there's a lot you have to be aware of, right? And there's a lot you have to how do I say, you have to really be careful and really think everything before. But and then they do a lot of how not restrain, but it's really different situation. Yeah.
So Rachel, I think we're going to now play your clip and talk about the scheduling and how you worked with the director there. So we're just going to move on to Edge of Summer, which is in the Cinematographers Debut Competition at the festival.
Happy?
Happy. Come on. You can't tell anyone.
Mum, we don't have any secrets, do we?
They're lying to you
too. Stop pretending, Mum. Child. The truth's important, isn't it? Secret forever.
So with that, you were obviously shooting down a mine with young cast, and it was the first director's first feature, because they normally shoot documentaries.
Yeah, I think like with every job, there's a different puzzle to solve or a different problem. You know, there's I kind of love prep because it's like it's never the same. Every film you've got like different things you have to figure out, and I think with this film, you know, it was really low budget, and we had young cast, 10 and 12. It was the first time they've ever done anything. I think we had 24 days and only 5 hours a day we could use the kids for, including rehearsals. So obviously the time was really precious with them. And so one of the things we talked about a lot in prep was how do you want the set to feel to get the best out of them? We really wanted to maximize that time. So for me, it was more about understanding the kind of atmosphere she wanted to create on set, making the kids feel comfortable. They deal with a lot of heavy emotional stuff, like a lot of adult themes in the film, and we wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable and safe. And they were quite shy in the beginning, so just lots of talks about, you know, how we behave as a crew, how we speak, how the set feels. I thought that was really important to make everyone feel safe. And then, yeah, a lot of the film, they go down this mine. And in the script, it says things like, it's really dark, you can't see anything, they touch the walls, and it's sort of like senses. So it's all about fear and the kids and imagination and what they think. So the director really felt like she wanted to not see anything, and she wanted to use the sound a lot. And so obviously you think, great. And then there's some scenes when they go down with these head torches, and then other times the kind of battery would die. So then they would use a lighter. And so yeah, I kind of got obsessed with like, what the hell am I going to do when I go down this mine with these torches? And the fact that if the director really wanted the whole kind of scene to be lit by this torch, she wanted it to feel real, she wanted it to feel scary, she wanted it to feel immersive, like that's how the kids are really experiencing it. And I was really worried about a single source of lighting controlled by a 10-year-old child. Who might just look at at his feet, or look right at the lens and flare everything, and then you can't see anything. So I was really concerned, and then also concerned that this source of light was above his head, like on his head. So I wanted to see his eyes. I really needed to see his face. So I did like lots and lots and lots of flare tests in prep. I think I might have tested every lens in Panavision. So if anyone wants to know what a lens flares like on a miner's headlamp, I've got you back. Yeah, and then I chose. I think we might have the lens tests. Very boring. Yeah, I tested lenses, found the lenses that I liked the flare, where I could have enough kind of texture and feeling, but still could see their eyes. And then once I had the lenses, we went to the mine. And I filmed a lot of kind of ISO tests in the mine to see how dark it was. You know, I think like you were saying before, same thing as night. You want to establish like how dark is dark. And she kept saying, I want it to be really dark. And I was like, okay, well, let me just show you. I know me and the gaffer, we rigged loads of LEDs and Asteras and stuff. And I had different levels of brightness, and I showed her all these varying degrees. But she just felt like, as soon as you start putting light in the mine, you just could see too much, and she just didn't feel emotionally the same way. As she wanted it to be really scary. And I did agree with her as well. So yeah, in the mine was 3 different locations. So, you know, trying to figure out logistically like how that all feels like one space as well.
Yeah, because I think we're going to see those lens tests later.
Great.
To look forward to. So we're just flicking through your mood board, actually. So I've just flicked through Adam. So Did you just want to explain how you collated this and think they have the
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of different things.
location?
There's some stills from films, you know, from Shot Deck or Film Grab. There's a lot of like photographs from photographers. The film's got a lot of stuff about childhood and innocence and imagination and its period, but we didn't want it to feel nostalgic. But I looked at a lot of 35mm and colour film from the day just for kind of the colourist, really, so we could get the right tone. And then I love these photos of these kids, like the boy in the film, he's quite feral and he's really in touch with nature. And, you know, we wanted everything to have a kind of a feeling, you know, like this, texture and kind of wildness to them. And we looked at different things like, is it slightly magical? There was like a kind of Peter Pan undertone running through the film in the beginning, which a lot of it kind of got dialed out later on in prep. But I like Beast of the Southern Wild is a really good example of a film that's got a slightly magical element, a bit of wonder to it. And in the beginning of the film, the kids have kind of got this wild imagination, and then throughout the film, some dark things happen and they grow up, so they start to become a bit more kind of aware of the adult world, and they don't have such a kind of fantasy world anymore.
I'm not sure if you can see the screen, but we're just looking at some of the stills tests as well.
Oh yeah, so we had these are like some day for night tests that I did. You might have to turn the lights down because I don't think you'll be able to see.
Could you dim the lights? So, if you could.
In the beginning, in the script, there's a lot of dusk and dawn and night, and the kids couldn't actually work that late, so it was just not possible to ever do any night scenes. So I went to the coast because we were filming by the sea, and I went to the coast and shot loads of different tests with like day for night filters, polars, and then, you know, 3 stops under, 2 stops under, took them back to the grade, and we did lots of tests. And I mean, I got to a place where I was kind of happy with it, because I quite liked the blue because it added to this kind of magical element to the film. But in the end, we didn't actually shoot any day for night. We just changed the timeline so that it was more like that 5 or 6, 7 o'clock summer evening. But it was quite fun to figure out this day for night testing, but we couldn't have even afforded the sky replacement really of the clouds and stuff, and we wouldn't have been able to wait for the clouds to pass. It was just not possible. We were just rampant, you know.
Yeah. And you're obviously dealing with a lot of challenges there, and Fernanda, you mentioned that the location was challenging on your shoot, so I think we're just going to see some BTS videos from that as well.
Heavily NDA'd.
No? Yeah, sorry, this is in, yeah. Sorry.
He's taking me back, Dad. To our special place. I'm not scared. Not with Adam. Adam, I've brought the recorder.
What for?
The knockers. To get proof.
Shh.
Contrasting.
So these are the light. Yeah. So these are the lighting tests, aren't they? So we'll just.
Oh yes. Oh these are the stills from the lighting test. I mean, I ended up buying loads of different caps, the head torch head torches on eBay. I borrowed some from the miners in the village. I got some from the Museum of Mining. I bought loads of old ones that didn't work and ripped them apart and put LED lights inside that I could control. I found ones from like a Chinese mining company that are crazy bright, and these are some like references from the recce's of just this feeling of this really hard light from outside, the sun coming in and then slowly getting like sucked into this tunnel of darkness. And this is a video from the recce of just me on my iPhone with just, I think I had a head torch that I used at work. And there was all this kind of... That's just my head torch, is it? Oh, God. I thought I'd muted it. Damn. Oops, I'm just going to sing over the top so you can't hear my voice. Yeah, so these are just, I think these are just some documents I was making for the gaffer and the production designer, because we were kind of collaborating together to make it period authentic. So I had a very specific type of head torch I had to use, but they weren't bright enough, so I had, and here's some flare tests from Panavision. So you'll see some of, I picked just a couple of options, so some that flare quite a lot, some that flare a little bit. There's a couple of lenses that you just get a complete white out, so you definitely wouldn't want to use that. Where did you end up shooting? We ended up shooting on Primos. It's so funny because I shot on Primos so much, and I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to use something else. I'm going to test everything. And then after testing about 50 sets of lenses, I was like, yeah, it's Primos. I just love them, and it worked. It did what I needed it to do. So yeah, I'd really tried hard to use something else, but I just couldn't.
Coming back. Okay. And then I think, Kate, you also shot with Panavision lenses for Invitation to a Bonfire. If you wanted to talk about how you selected the tools.
Yeah,
after
sure.
you played this.
Yeah. But these were P Vintage and the H series. There's a mixture and a few Primo lenses that were tweaked to be a good match because I needed good close focus for some of the handheld work.
Yes? What can I get for you?
Я change my mind. Пожалуйста.
My father always said it's better to be good than to be happy. But I was determined to be happy.
So I think in terms of, talking about scheduling and prep, because that sequence that with her getting ready, so the first part in the close-ups, cuts between the two characters, and that was all done in the studio. And, the director had talked about how she wanted, it wasn't scripted as that, but she wanted that sort of comparison of this person trying to take this identity. So, obviously we shot it with that edit in mind. And then the exterior stuff was obviously on location. And originally this was all daytime. And you read a script and you think, oh, this scene would just be so much nicer at dusk. But we had a really tight schedule and we couldn't shoot it over a number of nights. So it was a case where you have to, do a lot of cheating in camera with the, the ISO and the stop and the color temperature. So I'd been to that location. Fortunately, it was quite near where I was staying. I'd been there, at the time to make sure, sort of seeing where the sun was setting exactly and catching reflections of the sun in the reverse on windows and go, okay, we can't shoot that shot at that point. But yeah, it was a big collaboration in terms of all the festoons, because actually some of that was quite, I don't know how it looked there, but it was quite bright when we shot it. So we had to have very, very punchy bulbs so that they could, as it got darker, they could be dim right down, but they were giving enough level to read as being on when it was still relatively bright. So it was a kind of a bit of a dance in camera with doing that. But I'd just been doing Great Expectations earlier in the year, where I'd had a lot of this same challenge. So I sort of felt like I'm used to, there's a kind of almost a 2-hour window that you can really milk if you are very careful about the order that you do things. So obviously the exterior wide at the end was like the real time of day that the scene was meant to be set to. And then, the closest shots you can get away with, the biggest light available, being this far from the actor to kind of get that contrast. And then, so again, I'm looking forward to grading this scene because this is just the sort of dailies. So it'll be nice to kind of get into finessing it a bit more carefully. But all this is really just to talk about how, in terms of that prep and that conversation, if you're, the time of day that you see something in your mind, and then that conversation with the AD and how that all gets scheduled. And so obviously there's a few extras and Steadicam in that scene as she walks through. So we'd planned and we'd rehearsed that whilst we weren't under that time pressure of the daytime. So I've got that down. Everyone went for dinner, and then we shot it all so quite quickly in that sort of last bit of the day. Yeah.
In terms of the scheduling, also selecting your tools, how has that evolved over time in terms of working with the gaffer to select the fixtures, or your lens testing or camera testing? How have you refined that process?
I think you're always doing it specific to what the project requires, and obviously there's budget included in that, because if you are in the fortunate position where you've got a good budget, you choose the best tool that's fastest and that will work. But then I was just doing a smaller budget thing in the summer, and the line producer said you can't have that crane or that stabilized head, and so then you have to go back to the drawing board and go, okay, right. We'll use this and we'll do it slightly differently. So I think there's always that, budget does influence how you can go about doing things. Hopefully when there's a restriction, it leads to a more creative result, because you go, okay, I can't do that obvious choice that I know works. So let's think around this problem and come up with something more interesting that's still telling the story.
And Simona, did you agree with that? Because when I know Rachel was saying she selected, she wanted less flare, but you wanted more when you were working on Heartstopper. How did that affect your testing process with the lenses?
Yeah, sure. So when I started Heartstopper, I was interviewed for season 2, and this was a TV series that was like beautifully established in season 1, shot by a really talented DP. And I interviewed for season 2 with the same director, but the actual season of the second series was happening over summer for what I was doing. But our schedule was from October till December in the UK. So I thought, okay, that's me screwed right here, because this is meant to be like their summer of love, you know. The relationship between the characters evolves. Like they're very young, so the characters of Heartstopper are like, you know, they're basically coming of age. And throughout the different series, like 1, 2, and 3, like you get deeper and deeper into what that means. And season 2 was like, you know, the world becomes bigger. They go to Paris, you know, for a trip. And thank God, you know, that year we had leaves on the trees, and also the sun was shining in Paris, but it was not in the UK. So like a big part of my prep process, actually, and then how I kind of developed my own way of prepping started with that series, because I was going through the episodes, which were 8, by the way. So that's a lot of pages to be breaking down, like reading and breaking down, and ended up doing this, yeah, you don't really get that much sleep, but divided into like times of day, color-coded times of day. So then I had like a visual that when I'm actually looking at my computer or on a page, I know, well, I actually have very little nighttime or very little evening. So I'm just gonna put my money into the lenses, because they will just help me win half the battle. So like try to be, I guess, strategic, like understanding actually what you're shooting, apart from obviously doing the conversations with the director. So when it came to choosing the lenses, the season 1 was shot on K35s, which I knew and loved, but I just felt like I really want something that excites me or like puts me a little bit out of my comfort zone. So I went to Panavision, who I knew very well. By the way, I love the Primos too, but I couldn't shoot with them because they didn't cover large format. So I ended up just like taking stuff off the shelves, and at some point, I think Kate or Lee brought over a lens that looked kind of like weird, and it was like T1 or whatever. Benji was there, my focus putter is here. And we put it on the camera, and I thought, well, this is amazing. What is this lens? And I never used the H series before then. And that was like, you know, going down the rabbit hole of like, why is this lens so beautiful? How does it flare? And then we ended up like asking for how many focal lengths of the 28 do you have, or like 50s or whatever, and trying to, you know, like Rachel chose like certain torches. Like Benji was on Amazon, like trying to find, you know, like tungsten flashlights, or putting gels onto the actual torches. So then sometimes I would literally like operate the camera and be with a torch like this, and I'm like, oh, is the sun coming through in the lens? Or, you know, just trying to get a little bit of texture, and also make it feel like it's actually happening in a sunny time. Anyway, so I felt like, again, with the H series was like really winning the battle of that. And I love, you know, I love that they're vintage, but they still hold, you know, like you don't, I guess like you have to be aware of the stop and how you're lighting for them. But I felt like I could put people on the edge of the frame, and then, you know, their faces are not distorted. There's a lot of resolution there. And this is from season 3, by the way. I don't know what you're looking at. This is just to show actually the framing, and I'll tell you the story of why I chose these frames. But when I got back for season 3, I wanted to change the lenses, and again, like the dance started with like, let's test again, let's take stuff off the shelf. And we ended up shooting on the H series, but different, yes, different serial numbers for some lenses. And then for series 3, because the kind of the arc of the character is starting in the summer, finishes in the summer, but it's kind of like goes deep down into his mental health problems. So this is a teenager that was outed at school for being gay and bullied, and develops an eating disorder. So the whole of series 3 really focuses on that. So for me, when I started prep, because I've done season 2, I knew the sort of the backstory of the characters, and this is based on a graphic novel. So my aim really was like, how do I frame this character so people really feel what he feels without making the language too strong, because this is viewed primarily by, you know, like teenagers or young adults, and it has a history of looking a certain way. So I couldn't come in and do like you know, like put in something that feels too weird, or, you know, I feel like the young people nowadays are just so responsive, and I didn't want them to feel alienated because of the camera work. But so I chose like a bunch of stills. If we could go back at the very top, and I'll explain why, because I'm fascinated by framing and how you place people within the frame, and there's a lot of value in there. You know, there's a lot of storytelling in that, and because this was TV and we were doing like crazy page count, like 5-6 pages a day with like no rehearsals, there was very little time to light. So I was focusing on the camera, exactly like Zuzanna was saying. Anyway, so played with a lot of really wide lenses, close to people, placing people in weird parts of the frame. But we could not, you know, like cover a scene in that way. Like not all the shots could be that way. So then there were moments within the scene when we short framed or we center punched, or, you know, we really played with that concept. And well, towards the end of the season, I changed to anamorphic lenses because I guess like the arc of the character is that he starts discovering that he has this eating disorder, but then he heals and transforms into somebody confident. So I went to G-series anamorphic, and this is what you're seeing right now. Like this is happening at a summer fair, and there's a lot more texture. Obviously, the lens reacts to the light in a very different way than the spherical lens does. So I thought this is actually a lot of fun, and people will notice it, but they won't know what it is. So it was just interesting to find also the right anamorphics that weren't too expressive, but expressive enough to give me the texture. Yeah.
And Nancy, what's your process of selecting tools? If you want to talk to us about the upcoming series P-Valley that you've got a clip from.
So I brought 2 samples, low budget movie about the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe. A lot of people don't know who he was. You should look him up. You know, so interesting story about, it was during the AIDS epidemic. Originally he hooked up with Patti Smith. He had gone to art school, and then he became a really well-known photographer of celebs and beautiful black and whites of nature, calla lilies, but mostly what happened was, you know, we had another conservative era in the US where we are again, and he had some very homoerotic photos that caused quite a stir. Anyway, he passed away from AIDS, but did get this big reception at the Whitney Museum in New York. So Matt Smith, some of you know from Doctor Who, Doctor No, what is that word called? Doctor Who, and The Crown, came and played Robert Mapplethorpe. A woman named Marianne Rendon was Patti Smith. Maybe some miscasting. The movie was very small, indie, New York City, 70s and 80s. We had the 2 same period cars going around, and, you know, in different order. I mean, it was low budget, 19 days. And what I was really thrilled about is that Kodak had just opened a lab outside of Manhattan in Queens and Long Island City, and we were able to shoot Super 16. I did it on super speeds that really fit the era. Also, I had like no money for lights, and one forgets how much light you need for film. And we didn't even scan to 4K, we scanned to 2K. Really went for the grain and the texture. I had, so again, when I knew I was coming here, and then I got on the panel, so I have very little to show, just a couple stills and I don't even know what's first. Or P-Valley?
Yeah, P-Valley.
Okay, so
you can
P-Valley...
talk about the lens testing process for P-Valley and also...
Okay, I'll just introduce it quickly. So P-Valley was a series I shot in Atlanta for Stars. Pretty low budget, first season, all African-American cast, all women directors. And I was really fortunate to work with Karina Evans. She was is a very young, to this day, in her 20s, director who came out of Canada and had done a lot of Drake music videos. Of course, we wanted to shoot anamorphic. That didn't happen, but she wanted, you'll see I have like a blue streak filter, for flare. I used Panavision 3 sets of detuned lenses, different amounts of craziness. The story takes place in what was a juke joint, which is like a black club back in the day, in the 50s. And now the proprietor, the grandson, actually a trans person, even though she called herself Uncle Clifford, she has no money. And so what happened was the strip club, we were using high-end lights, stereotubes, and but I had to, the showrunner, Katori Hall, was very concerned that there would not be any fancy lights shown, so we got empty park cans and put our own LEDs in, everything DMX, but to the showrunner, even though it was all bright and she wouldn't be able to see it anyway, we were true to this proprietor of the club not having any money. Let's see, so I don't even know, okay, so this is just a trailer. I'm, again, from the internet, sorry, I was already in Europe when all this happened.
Every bitch got a choice in this game.
If y'all don't learn nothing else from me, y'all learn this. In this life, you've always got to go full out.
What's your name?
Autumn Night.
And anyway, I just grabbed a few shots from our original lookbook with the director. We'll just flip through some of these. And just talking about our color palette, just so grateful to be working with LEDs. We could switch color in a second. So that was useful. And then outside the club was more monochromatic, and flashbacks. I used some lens babies. We were low budget. I mean, we really were, and I got these crazy filters that had cracks in them for some of that distortion. But the cracks, yeah, there, and some, and then this is Mapplethorpe. Check out Robert Mapplethorpe. He's getting lost in history.
Tell us the story of your union. I mean, when and where did you two get married?
Thank you. Oh, we met in California, Mom. Right after college.
After you dropped out of Pratt, right?
Yeah.
This was the tiniest room. We couldn't paint. I mean, it was like a nightmare, but we managed.
These two can barely take care of themselves.
Actually, we take pretty good care of each other. Dad.
I loved working in film again. It was really great, because I needed so much light. It kind of works with the period that some of it's much harder than I usually would use. Again, the Arri 416, a great camera. We were so low budget that mostly I had one camera that I operated, diverse crew. I had women camera crew. Eventually I was able to get a few days of Steadicam and second camera. I have to say, working in film with the taps are terrible. So nobody was at Video Village, and we zoomed through our days. That's how I did it in 19 days, right? Anyway.
And how does your prep process differ between shooting on film and digital?
Well, by the way, this sequence, we had to have one day in a sound stage, although it wasn't very soundproof, to get the New York tax incentives. And they wanted, VFX, do this, do that. And the director, Ondi Timoner, and I said, let's just get some slide projectors. And we had a couple people putting slides all over Robert and this little white wall. It was, hands-on, no VFX. So anyway, how to do low budget, period. And before we shot, we just looked at some, here's a couple color palette things we can flip through, what it was like in the 70s in New York and then 80s. And Robert did get some acclaim. He still stayed best friends with Patty, but he came out, and again, his work was pretty extreme, but he was, anyway, just check him out. So I had 10 minutes to do camera tests in the camera rental house in New York. I mean, seriously, it was insane. So, the actors came in, and I just, there I was in a rental house. There was nothing, but I just wanted to see how the grain would react and color, and I just love Super 16. So, I used the daylight 250 that I did rate at 200 ASA. I'm going to say ASA. Some of you remember that, not ISO. And I did use the 500 inside at night, rated at 320. And fortunately, I had the super speeds. And the 416, I'm an Aton owner still. I just donated it to the ASC. And the 416 is a great camera. It's like a mini Aton. I jumped in cars with, it was so fast and freeing. And hope to use it again. Oh, yeah.
We're probably going to cut to questions soon because I know we've overrun a little bit, but I just wondered if anyone else had anything to add about how they choose the tools or the techniques and how the prep process differs between shooting on film or digital. Is there anything anyone wants to add there?
So I went to film school shooting a lot of film, so felt very comfortable around 16 when we did Sweet Sue. And what was different compared to, let's say, Heartstopper, particularly for season 2, was that there was the collaboration with the colorist and the DI. Well, maybe less so with the DI team prep, but the collaboration with the colorist and doing lighting tests that I could actually use, putting the right color palette within the lighting test that I could actually use in a DI suite and come up with a lot. So everybody will look at those images and say, yeah, it does look like summer, or we like how the colors look like. And there was a process of shooting those tests and showing that to the director, which was also quite close to the shoot, but essentially everybody agreeing that this is gonna look like this is gonna carry through the editing process, which meant that when I actually got to the grade, which was very short, 2 days for a 30-minute episode, there was very little back and forth when it came to, the colors are like this, particularly because we used very strong saturated RGB lighting in a lot of scenes. So that went really well because, we had those conversations in prep, whereas with film, obviously it's a different process. But as Nancy was saying, choosing your stock and I guess agreeing on how grainy, how textured it feels.
And you also shot some of Heartstopper on a virtual stage, didn't you? So what does that do to your planning process as well?
Well, I kind of like got thrown in really because we use virtual production, which is shooting within an LED volume for both season 2 and season 3 with different vehicles. So season 2 was like a coach with like 40 kids in it, and we were filming in a studio their journey from London to Paris. And that was like my first time doing that. And we had a pre-light day, like half pre-light day. The director arrived and he just said, well, let's shoot. So that was, you know, like you're kind of thrown in, and, you know, I guess like having the right crew with you on set just gives you a bit more headspace to feel like you can delegate and kind of like figure out the problems. And to be honest, like other than that, there was not much to it apart from conversations with Netflix about, I guess, like the digital protocol around it and how we calibrate the screens. But from a creative process, it was pretty much the same like being on location, but there's this added element of this is a digital screen and how that's gonna impact the lighting and maybe how real it feels. So yeah, that was it really.
And filmmaking is such a collaborative process. We've covered like the collaboration with the director, and it's all the way through from prep through to shooting. So I just wonder how you get everyone together to pool ideas during that process before the shoot actually starts. Any useful suggestions for the audience?
She said WhatsApp groups.
Oh, sorry.
I guess a lot of it is on scouts as well. If you're scouting and you go with production designer, location, and director, you know, you can talk about a lot of things on scouting. And often when you kind of reject locations, there's a reason. So then you start to understand like what you're looking for, and then you're all together in minibuses and vans and kind of invariably end up showing each other things. And I've got this idea and that idea, and you know, someone might show you some fabrics or curtains. So I guess the scouting seems to be where you kind of start to develop that language.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't know, we were going to watch some of the Nevers, but I think we've run over quite a lot. So does anyone have any questions for the panel? Before?
This question is for Rachel, but I'd be happy to hear other people's perspective over here, Rachel. Hi. Hello. You mentioned earlier using, you know, having stills to show to your colorists for the grade. Did that inform the way you shot, or was that something that you applied, you just returned to later as references with your colorist when you went into the grade? And was there any other kind of prep for the grade as well?
I mean, the colorist on this film I've used him, it's my colorist, I've worked with him on about 5 or 6 long form projects, so we have a kind of dialogue anyway. It's really easy and really fast, and I shot some lens tests. Once I'd had decided on the lenses and the filters and all of that stuff, I shot some tests outside, inside, took them to the grade and made a lot for the show. And we just changed the reds and greens a little bit so it felt a bit more like film. Because I was very aware I was in nature a lot and I didn't want that poppy digital green. And I wanted the reds to have a bit more of that kind of burgundy tone. And I wanted the blacks to have a bit of brown in them. So we made it wasn't too heavy. I didn't want it to feel too heavy either. I didn't want to get on location and have a freak out. And I was in Cornwall and I wasn't going to be able to go back to London. So I made a very like subtle film lot, which I just used for the whole show. And then obviously back in the grade, together we just worked through it. But he's like really fast and we have a real nice intuition between us. So it was really easy, to be honest. Yeah, my colorist is called Jatin Patel and he works at Harbour in London.
Just going to say, in Bonfire, we had, so there's the mood boards that I had sort of gathered. And also on a lot of television shows, they do, I think sometimes it's called a show and tell or a tone meeting, and it happens like maybe 2 weeks out from starting principal photography, and all the departments it'll be like a 2-hour Zoom call with executives and various people on it, and so the DP, costume designer, production designer, everyone's kind of presenting their element. So and then the studio might ask questions about certain aspects. Hopefully there isn't anything major that comes up at that stage because it's quite late in the day, but. So based on the stills that I had sort of collected and shared with the director and we were happy with, that was what helped form the basis of the LUT. And I was quite lucky on Bonfire. Well, lucky in the sense that we got a few extra days prep because a few people got COVID that were needed, like the director and the cast. So then we ended up, I think, with like 6 extra days at the point where they were like a month. You know, it was like we were meant to start on Monday, and then we got 3 more days, and then someone else got COVID. We got another 3, and it was amazing because the house, which is where we were starting, the art department hadn't got the drapes in yet. We hadn't finished like the pre-lights, but being able to have the LUT that we'd worked with, and then see it in the spaces as we're lighting, I realised that there was quite heavy blacks that meant I was just going to have to be very careful with the level of woodwork there and really putting a lot of fill in, or, you know, like easing off on that. So I think that it can inform, and it's helpful, I think, to have, you know, the look that you're trying to hold through, especially for, you know, art department and costume, to see how ultimately you're hoping it's going to end up.
I think in the middle over there, it was the cap.
Hi, thank you very much for this really great panel. I wanted to ask if it's a very similar or maybe a very different way when you're on a TV series and you shoot with many DPs, like for example when you shoot 1 episode and there's another DPs who shoot the other episodes. Is it very different, the prep there? Do you get together with the other DPs talking about the whole series, kind of like that? Are there more problems, or is it easier, kind of like that?
Good question. So most TV series I've done have alternating DPs. On P-Valley, I started the series and, with Korean Evans, the pilot director, which became 101. And we got a local guy from Atlanta, African-American, as my co-DP. And we had an incredible lookbook of images. We had the art department blow up everything, and we papered the walls of the director's office, and then they would leave, and then, you know, the director after prep never had an office. It was pretty low budget for TV. But I got my co-DP in when I was doing tests because I was using these really extreme lenses. The way there was like medium and then less detuned, and then the really extreme ones, I think I ended up sending back most of them because they were so soft. But because you want your co-DP to be DOP, as you guys say, to be in the entire prep period, you try to bargain with as many days as you can get. Some series will do blocks. We were alternating on P-Valley. There were 8 episodes. And, you know, I just made sure that our images matched. And it's really a beautiful process, so, you know, of sharing, and because we don't usually get to work with other cinematographers. And so, you know, it's just really exciting to, you know, be able to collaborate. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I did a TV show last year where it was 2 blocks. So I did block 1 and there was another DP did block 2. And I'd never done that before because I'd only ever shot my own shows where I just made all the decisions. And I asked the other DP, do you want to come to prep? Should we just choose the lenses together? So, and people were like, you're crazy, like, why are you opening that door? But I just didn't want to like give someone else the lenses and then they have to deal with them for months at a time. So actually Natalie and me, we did all the lens tests together and we were really part of that process together, and there was things she liked but I didn't, and the same way around. But then we found things that we both responded to, and that was really nice to collaborate like that.
I think that is the ideal, when everyone is included in that way, especially if you're starting a series and you know that there's going to be like a lot of, you know, dark nighttime stuff. being considerate about choosing a camera that doesn't just work for your block, or you're not shooting on lenses that can't open beyond T4. So I think that, sometimes the scripts aren't finished, that can be a problem, or the later block DPs aren't hired yet. But I think it can really vary because a lot of UK television is block, so it'll swap, and you might never see, you might be sort of slightly ships in the night. And then on the bigger shows where they might be shooting more, that they'll engage the DPs for the whole series, so you might be on it for 6 or 9 months, and you share an office with all the other DPs, and there's a decision made about, this is a certain colour of green that we're going to use. And, if it's like I'm thinking specifically in some stuff in silo, but so then it can be, you'll test and you discuss stuff and then you agree, and it bounces back between many people in Apple, and eventually a decision gets made.
And then some episodes are meant to feel very different, so then that's okay.
Yeah.
And other times you want it to feel like a kind of cohesive series, because you don't want someone to come in and completely change the language of the show so that it feels like a different show. But then other times you might have a flashback episode, or a different part of the emotional journey of a character might develop. So then there might be freedom to allow that DP to just completely change the look. Depends on the show, really, doesn't it?
I think it does so much, because when I did Hannah, the producer said, as long as you and your director tell the story, and so that was just very freeing. But it was a road movie kind of narrative, so we weren't ever going back to spaces that had already been seen by the viewer, in earlier episodes. So there wasn't that worry that something might look radically different because it was all sort of fresh. So yeah, so it can be many things.
No, I'll wait, but I do have a funny story about...
Carry on.
Okay, so I ended up doing a series, so I mostly live in Los Angeles, but somehow I ended up, I never shoot there. But I was back in New York doing a series called The Family with the great Joan Allen and Alison Pill, etc. And Fabian had shot the pilot a while back. Beautiful, Fabian Wagner. You might hopefully you know his work. He's absolutely amazing. So what happened was I didn't start the show. Somebody else did. They weren't going to have alternating, and we're getting behind. So they said, "Would you come?" And I said, "Sure." So I get there, and I didn't know until the pilot director came and did my episode that DP I was working with had changed the whole package. It was Panavision, but it was like, oh my God! It was insane that he had changed the whole package and the look. And so the pilot director comes, and he's got a lot of pull, I guess, and it's like a Friday, and he's calling network in California and gets it okayed that we get the same lenses that Fabian used. It had to be flown from London, and so I'm carrying like 4 packages, my poor ACs, and this director was really last minute about everything, and I finally found out from Fabian, he's always like that, but man, oh man, but for me, if there's a pilot that's picked up, why wouldn't somebody talk to the DP who did it if they were happy with the look? And anyway, but it all worked out. But it was like crazy because it was PL mount and then we had PV lens. It was just like, I felt sorry for my ACs and they wouldn't hire another person, but we got through it.
What do you think is the best way in prep to work with a first-time director that's also acting in the projects and doesn't have a strong vision for the project?
I had the situation lately. I mean, it's not that she didn't have a strong vision, she did, but she was acting and it was a hybrid, so it was a documentary, so she is acting with her mom, so it was even more abstract and it could go all the way wrong, but we prepared so well, and we had so much time, like going through whole scenes. And what we did is not only the shot list, but we also, for each scene, we had the most important feeling that the director wants. Yeah, like some words that is crucial, because in the end of the day, it was me to say, okay, we got it, right? Okay, this is there. So it was a very small crew, and we discovered this Milanote program that we put all the shots and our notes, even for the ACs. They all knew which like, because I knew I'm gonna be there as a director as well for some scenes. I wanted whole crew to know exactly what we are shooting, on which lens, and like every detail they knew beforehand. So so there was not talking about the technical stuff before the scene. So it's always about talking before and preparing well and discussing, and I think that's a great journey then.
Just to add to that very quickly, I worked with an actor-director, and they were not technical at all. Like, obviously, they've been on millions of sets and like really large-scale stuff. And he told me, like, just never let me look at the monitor, because I'm just gonna get into this self-conscious state. And I think for me, what was, and that was what was important is to really understand like what he likes, what he feels comfortable with, and it's just building the trust between us. And I think, it's like, it's a human thing. You look at each other, you're like, I'm not sure about this, or it's about feeling. So I feel like break the ice, spend time together, and then try to figure him out as a person. Yeah.
We have time for just one more question at the second row, just there.
It's out? Okay. Okay, first of all, I wanted to thank you for sharing your work. I think it's a big privilege to have so many experienced people sitting here in front of us, and we can learn a lot. So I wanted to ask 2 questions. Maybe I start with a negative one, and then afterwards a more positive one. So all of you are like very experienced and very respected professionals. But I think a lot of us are aware what is like the climate for female cinematographers and for female filmmakers. And I wanted to ask you how you as professionals feel about the situation right now and the representation of female work, female filmmakers, especially in festivals like these. So this is like my first question. My second question is, you guys have a lot of experience, and what can you give to us as the follow generations of young filmmakers, directors and cinematographers? How can we learn maybe from your experiences? Like, what would you give us as advice? Sure question. I mean, I think there's been a lot said around the conversation around representation, so I was just going to jump to the second part. That's not to dodge it, it's just, well, I mean, if others, I'm only speaking for myself, but I feel like there's been a lot of chat lately, and I'm positive that something good is going to come out of that conversation. But the more positive point, like, how do we move forward? I mean, I think that I'm so lucky that there were cinematographers such as Nancy and Nina Kellgren and Sue Gibson, and all those generations of female DPs that went before me that would have had an infinitely harder time. And looking at the younger DPs, certainly in the UK scene, and how much faster it seems that opportunities are coming to break into television, I'm positive that we are moving, in a better direction. But I think the most important thing is just to keep doing it, and like there's always going to be people that say no and you can't do it, and try not to let that stuff just get into your head. Just keep on going, so that's my, that would be my, don't dwell on it. I mean, try and change it as much as you can, but it's always a balance of your energies, and so just be the best DP that you can be. I hope that's not a fob off. That's how I feel today in this moment.
And I've been doing it a really long time. I'm like a stubborn horse with the blinders that won't move. Listen, you guys, it's just not a fair world. Look around. First of all, there's no diversity here in terms of other cultures, and are there any trans people here? I don't know, but
There's definitely 2 trans people with films in competition because I've met them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But we just have to believe that there are people out there that will accept that we are competent, give us a chance, and if you really want it, you're not going to give up. And also, you know, now besides the woman thing, I got the age thing, like, you know, am I still walking? Yes, I work out 6 days a week, you know, but it's there too, and there's a lot of ageism. But even for the white males, they're having a rough time at the ASC if they're of a certain age. You know, it's like, anyway.
I guess I just wanted to say about the kind of what can you learn from us, or what can you do to like be the best. Form communities, you know, make friendship groups. I think like I'm part of Illuminatrix. I know a few of us are here, and it was really amazing for me to join that group of people that could help me and give advice and inspire me and support me. And it's been great to like have just allies, really. If you are having a low day or you have a problem, you can always guarantee someone in our WhatsApp group has had the same problem, and are like invariably half of us. And so you just have to say, oh God, the guys, sometimes it's about venting, like this happened to me today, I just need to share it, and someone will give you advice or turn it into a positive of how to use that. And so I would say form communities and form support groups, because actually you can be really strong together. And that's why a lot of these conversations have been happening this week, because women got together and started talking and sharing their experiences.
I think that's a very positive note to end on. So I just want to say thanks to the wonderful panel and to everyone that came along. Hope you found it interesting and useful.